Imagine standing at the edge of the world, a map laid before you like an unwritten novel, filled with blank spaces and potential. The age of exploration was this thrilling frontier, an era where the ambitious hearts of navigators and merchants collided with the mysteries of distant lands. Have you ever considered how this pivotal time redefined global trade? As you settle in for this journey, prepare to unearth revelations that extend beyond mere exploration. They will reveal an intricate tapestry of connections that change the very fabric of economy, culture, and society around the globe. You might be wondering, how did this era shift the way we think about goods, services, and the very meaning of wealth? In the 15th and 16th centuries, as ships braved uncharted waters, they not only carried new products but also ideas, dreams, and sometimes even despair. The routes they forged would establish networks that linked continents in ways previously thought impossible. So, stay with me. By the end of this exploration, you will view modern trade through a dramatically different lens. Picture yourself aboard a grand ship, sails billowing in the wind, setting forth from the harbor of Lisbon in pursuit of adventure. The year is 1492. The world you know is confined to the edges of a familiar map, yet, just beyond the horizon lies an abundance of undiscovered lands teeming with rich resources. Herein lies a critical insight. The age of exploration catalyzed an economic transformation that spanned continents. European explorers such as Christopher Columbus, Vasco da Gama, and Ferdinand Magellan were not just seekers of new lands, they were pioneers of a vast commercial network that would redefine how we perceive global exchanges. Did you know that prior to the age of exploration, trade was largely regional, with merchant routes connecting cities within the same area? For centuries, routes like the Silk Road facilitated trade between Asia and Europe, but the dynamics were relatively limited. The arrival of European explorers opened the floodgates to long-distance trade, creating international markets that became the backbone of global commerce. Think about this. What would have happened if these explorers had remained confined to their own territories? The course of history would have unfolded vastly differently. As explorers set sail, they introduced to Europe exotic spices from the East, precious metals from the Americas, and sumptuous fabrics from the Middle East. The sheer volume of goods that began to flow between continents transformed everyday life. Spices like pepper, cinnamon, and nutmeg became so sought after that their prices skyrocketed, leading to new economic opportunities and, eventually, the establishment of trading companies that would dominate global commerce. Just imagine how the flavor of food was revolutionized, turning bland medieval dishes into an aromatic banquet. But this wasn't just about groceries. Here's something you didn't expect. The introduction of new crops played a crucial role in shaping economies and societies. Crops such as potatoes, tomatoes, and maize found their way back to Europe from the New World. These foods not only diversified diets but also contributed to population growth. Increased food production fueled urbanization, spurring the rise of cities and creating a vibrant marketplace that far exceeded anything seen in prior centuries. The transformation of agriculture was the very engine that powered the wheels of economic change. What comes next will leave you speechless. As trade routes expanded, so did the idea of wealth itself. With goods now flowing from the Americas, Africa, and Asia into Europe, societies began to evolve. The emergence of mercantilism, a system that prioritized state power and wealth, would lay the groundwork for capitalism. Nations clamored to establish colonies for resource extraction, leading to fierce competition among European powers. But this would prove to be as much about control as it was about commerce. Imagine the power dynamics that began to shift. Nations sought to assert control over vast territories, altering not only trade but also the very lives of indigenous peoples. The impact of the age of exploration was not merely economic, it had far-reaching social and cultural implications that we cannot overlook. How many lives were forever changed, negatively and positively, by the tides of trade? Millions of indigenous peoples were thrust into a world shaped by European demand, navigating a complex landscape of trade goods, new technologies, and cultural exchanges. As these explorers returned with treasures from far-off lands, curiosity soared. What new wonders had they discovered? But the flip side of this burgeoning trade was exploitation. Slavery and forced labor became integral components of this international economic system, leading to devastation for many communities. The transatlantic slave trade would emerge as one of the darkest chapters of this era, with millions forcibly removed from their homes to work on plantations in the Americas, all in the name of economic gain. Now, let's broaden the lens and consider the role of Africa in this new world market. Africa was not merely a silhouette on European maps, it became an essential supplier of not just humanity, through the slave trade, but also resources like gold and ivory. The introduction of new products into European markets, paired with African resources, firmly established a triangular trade route that bound continents in a complex web of commerce and human suffering. Are you starting to see how intertwined trade, culture, and human experience became during this period? We have only scratched the surface. While opulent goods made their way to Europe, the interaction between different cultures also led to the exchange of ideas, beliefs, and technologies. The trading hub of the spice trade in the East, for example, facilitated a unique blend of cultures. Those who engaged in trade were often the first to challenge established norms. Would you believe that this cross-cultural exchange laid the foundations for the Enlightenment and scientific developments that would follow? As the threads of global commerce drew tighter, so too did innovation flourish. The age of exploration didn't just stop at the raw materials and spices, it transformed trade practices and shipping technologies. The development of the caravel, a highly adaptable sailing ship, allowed for longer and more efficient sea voyages. This innovative leap would not only enhance trade but also inspire a wave of technological advancements across Europe, from navigation methods to cartography. Consider how this innovation resembles a domino effect. The advancements made in shipbuilding and navigation transformed not only trade routes but also the very concept of distance. You could now undertake voyages that would have taken months, in just weeks. This made it possible for traders to explore new markets and brought distant cultures into close contact, sparking curiosity, creativity, and cultural exchange. Let's pause and reflect on a key concept of this era, the spice trade. You might find it astonishing that the quest for spices not only defined trade routes but also funded empires. The desire for nutmeg alone led to fierce competition and even war between European powers. Who would have thought a simple spice could have such a colossal impact on European politics and global trade dynamics? The allure of these spices painted a vivid picture of profit, conquest, and connection across oceans. As we journey onward through the unfolding narrative of global trade, let's not forget the impact of the age of exploration on the rise of global powers. Nations like Portugal, Spain, the Netherlands, and England began to establish themselves as dominant players on the world stage. Their power was not merely derived from military strength, it stemmed from their ability to harness trade networks. The Dutch East India Company, for instance, emerged as a powerhouse, monopolizing trade routes and significantly influencing colonial policies. This commercial empress bypassed traditional state power and introduced an innovative model of capitalism that focused on profit, efficiency, and global reach. But what about the everyday person? How did these grand trade networks impact the common individual? The age brought about unprecedented access to new goods, leading to changes in lifestyles and consumption patterns. The wealthy could indulge in luxuries of the East, while even the lower classes saw their lives enriched with new products, sugar, tea, and textiles. The aroma of exotic spices wafted through the streets of European cities, illustrating a burgeoning world of consumption and desire. Stay tuned, those shifts in consumer behavior created ripples across societies, ushering in early forms of capitalism that we still see today. Marketplaces crowded with new products gave rise to a consumer culture that would evolve into a central aspect of modern life. But remember, the impacts weren't solely positive. What does this all tell us about the darker aspects of trade? Every thriving market has its shadow. What about the people who were uprooted, marginalized, or oppressed as a result? The true cost of this worldwide trade expansion was often borne by those who remained unseen: the laborers, colonized peoples, and enslaved individuals who endured unspeakable hardships. Have we ever truly reckoned with this legacy? Now, as we continue our exploration of how the age of exploration redefined global trade, we need to pause for a moment and consider the role of communication and knowledge exchange. As trade flourished, so did the dissemination of information. The printing press, introduced to Europe just prior to the age of exploration, revolutionized how information spread. Maps, navigational guides, and accounts of distant lands circulated, fueling curiosity and competition among nations. Are you beginning to see the intricate dance of cause and effect? The age of exploration wasn't just about searching for wealth, it was an epoch that invited people to rethink the boundaries of their world. As we venture closer to the conclusion of this part of our journey, it's crucial to synthesize what we've uncovered. The age of exploration redefined global trade, weaving a tapestry of interconnected stories of ambition, innovation, human suffering, and cultural exchange. We have witnessed how this era altered trade routes, sparked new economic models, and forever changed the lives of countless individuals. Now, I invite you to join me as we dive deeper into this narrative in the second part of our exploration, looking into the lasting legacies of this transformative period and how it has shaped our contemporary understanding of global trade and cultural relationships. The journey is far from over, and the revelations that await will challenge what you thought you knew about the roots of today's global economy. Stay tuned, the adventure continues. As we embark on the second leg of our journey through the age of exploration and its profound impact on global trade, let's take a moment to reflect on the intricate tapestry we've woven thus far. We've explored how the brave explorations of Europeans reshaped trade routes, established new economic models like mercantilism, and catalyzed the development of consumer culture. Now, let us uncover the enduring legacies of this transformative period, how the reverberations of the age of exploration still echo through to our contemporary world. When we talk about the legacies of this era, we must first examine the world of colonialism that emerged from the ambitious sails of explorers. The establishment of colonial empires was driven by the desire for resources, wealth, and strategic advantage. While nations like Spain and Portugal initially took the lead, the influx of riches from the New World gradually shifted the balance of power to countries like England and the Netherlands. This burgeoning empires engaged in fervent competition, leading to a race that would ultimately result in the colonization of vast swathes of Asia, Africa, and the Americas. Consider the far-reaching implications of this colonization. The extraction of resources proved both economically beneficial and destructive. Nations now had access to gold, silver, sugar, cotton, and countless other commodities, invigorating their economies and enriching their coffers. Still, the costs borne by indigenous populations were staggering, leading to the plunder of their lands, the decimation of cultures, and the devastation of populations through violence and disease. The intertwined fates of colonizers and colonized reveal a poignant duality. Progress for some came at an unyielding cost to others. Equally vital in our examination is how colonialism shaped contemporary economies. The foundations laid during the age of exploration created a model of trade that persists today. The mercantilist view of accumulating wealth by maintaining a favorable balance of trade gave way to capitalist ideals focused on free markets and competition. The systems of colonial exploitation became a prototype for modern capitalism, showcasing both the advantages of globalization and the inequalities that often accompany it. Let's pivot for a moment to the impact on cultures and identities. The age of exploration laid the groundwork for a cultural exchange that continues to enrich societies across the globe. As goods traveled across oceans, so too did people, ideas, and beliefs. The blending of cultures was not merely incidental, it became a driving force of societal evolution. The introduction of unprecedented crops transformed diets across Europe and the Americas, while trade networks facilitated the sharing of artworks, religious beliefs, and languages. Think about the culinary delights we relish today, a melange of flavors from around the world that would be unrecognizable without this history of exchange. Imagine Italian pasta seasoned with spices from India, or a Mexican dish featuring tomatoes from Peru. This rich cultural tapestry is a testament to the way trade not only reshapes economies but also enriches human experience through the fusion of diverse influences. As we travel further down this path, an essential aspect to acknowledge is the era's contribution to the discourse on race and inequality. The age of exploration carved distinctions that created hierarchical structures based on race and ethnicity. European notions of superiority fueled colonial policies predicated on oppression and entitlement to lands inhabited by lesser cultures. This foundation laid the groundwork for enduring racial dynamics that persist in many regions of the world today. The ideologies and attitudes established during this time would pave the way for systems of discrimination, shaping relations between nations and communities long after the initial exploration ceased. Now let's navigate towards methods of governance that emerged from this period of extensive exploration and colonization. The ambitions of nation-states during the age of exploration resulted in creative administrative strategies, giving rise to complex systems of governance. The establishment of chartered companies, such as the British East India Company and the Dutch West India Company, signified a shift in the balance of power between state and private enterprise. These entities operated with autonomy, directly influencing trade policies and practices without direct state intervention. The emergence of these companies marked a significant chapter in corporate governance, a model that continues to shape modern commerce. The level of influence wielded by corporations today, often exceeding that of some nation-states, can trace its roots back to the practices established during this transformative period. As you ponder the global corporations that dominate the modern marketplace, keep in mind how their rise is steeped in a historical legacy begun by those early business pioneers. We must also consider the role of technology in shaping the age of exploration and the consequent trade networks. Advances in navigation, shipbuilding, and cartography were instrumental in expanding trade routes and discovery. The developments initiated during this period created not only efficient means for exploration but also spurred a technological revolution. The introduction of the astrolabe and advancements in timekeeping, for instance, made voyages across vast oceans feasible, transferring geographical knowledge and enhancing maritime prowess. Fast forward to the present, and the parallels remain striking. Technological innovations continue to catalyze changes in global trade dynamics, from container ships to e-commerce platforms. Today's interconnected world is a dizzying blend of ancient trade routes transformed by modern technology. The very nature of consumer behavior has evolved. Individuals can now procure goods from around the globe with a mere click, harking back to the unquenchable thirst for exotic items that fueled the explorations of the 15th and 16th centuries. But let's not overlook the social repercussions that arose from this technological growth. As concepts of globalization emerged, they brought with them challenges that accompanied the benefits. The narratives tied to modern trade reflect contemporary issues surrounding labor exploitation, environmental degradation, and cultural homogenization. Today's consumers often find themselves navigating the intricate balance of ethical choices, global responsibility, and economic aspirations, a challenge rooted in the complexities of our past. As we weave this rich tapestry of legacy, we must also acknowledge the rapid advancements in ideologies that took shape during and post-age of exploration. Enlightenment thinkers emerged with radical ideas about liberty, democracy, and human rights, ideas partially rooted in the cross-cultural exchanges established during the 15th to 17th centuries. The intellectual ferment associated with this era paved the way for revolutions and movements that would radically reshape societies and governance structures in Europe and the Americas. Thus, the cultural exchanges initiated through exploration and trade did not merely introduce new products, they also inspired a reevaluation of societal values and principles. This quest for exploration and knowledge was fundamental in fostering a sense of global interconnectedness, one that has been echoed in the discourse of global citizenship and the plight for social justice in the modern age. In closing, the Age of Exploration bears witness to a foundational pivot in history, a period where the thirst for discovery and the pursuit of wealth forever altered the course of humanity. We have unraveled how these bold adventures not only opened trade routes but also constructed a framework of economic systems, shaped cultural identities, and ignited discussions on equity and governance. As we stand on the shoulders of this historical legacy, it is crucial to grasp the complexities of our current globalized society. The interwoven stories of ambition, innovation, suffering, and cultural convergence remind us that history is a tapestry rich with lessons. The repercussions of the Age of Exploration are reflected in our modern economies, global relationships, and ongoing social debates. So, as you conclude this journey through the Age of Exploration and its legacies, consider how history is not just a series of events, but a mirror reflecting the present and influencing the future. The lessons we glean from this transformative period compel us to acknowledge the interconnectedness of our world and the shared responsibility we bear in navigating its still unfolding story. The adventure continues, and the choice of how we forge ahead, connected, informed, and conscious of our past, lies in our hands.